has a corollary question, which is a lot easier. Can any of you think of a wicked thing done by a person of faith because of their faith? You've already thought of one. You've already thought of another one. In the course of the evening, you'll think of several more. Actions of wickedness, iniquity, that are performed because people believe God wants them done, or because the person performing them believes he's doing God's work. This is a form of crime and evil unknown to the unbeliever. And I think if it doesn't make a case for the moral superiority of atheism, it certainly makes the case against the moral superiority of faith. Very well. There's a second, and even more, I think, overpowering disadvantage, self-imposed on the religious, because they can't very far depart. Rabbi Wolpe gets very daring with this. If you ask him what he really thinks about the texts that tell him what God wants, he will not say that they're to be taken strictly literally. He will, for example, say that the Jewish prayer, I imagine he will say, I've actually never asked him directly, but the prayer with which Jewish men are supposed to begin every day, that thanks God, just to begin with, thanks them for not making them a woman and not making them a goy or Gentile. He says, well, that's not really, no, it isn't. Of course it's not. It's not a moral thing to say. It's a stupid thing to say, and it's also a nasty thing to say. So most Jews don't say it anymore. So if you follow me closely here, the less religious people become, the more moral they become. If the Quranic prescriptions on amputation and mutilation and stoning were all followed, if every thief in Egypt had their hand removed, no work could be done. So they don't do it. They should do it. They're ordered to do it, but they don't. They're ordered to kill the unbeliever in specific terms. In the Hadith, not the Quran, but in the sayings of the Prophet, which have the same theological and moral weight in the teaching, it is said that anyone who tries to change their religion from Islam, to apostatize, must be killed. They can't do it. They should. It's a divine mandate, but they don't. Because the innate morality that belongs to all of us, fortunately, comes to save us from the wickedness that comes from the texts. And what that means to me, and what I will continue arguing throughout the evening in different ways, is this. It's a very simple proposition. Man did not make God in his own image, as is said in the Bible. To the contrary, men and women made many gods in their own images, and it shows. After all, it's just as difficult for me to disprove that there are 1,000 gods as that there is one. And every believer you know has gods he doesn't believe in. The rabbi doesn't believe in Allah. You don't believe in Zeus. Muslims don't believe that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God. All of them think, oh, that's absolute nonsense, but that their own belief is the valid one. Now again, I put it to you, either all these beliefs are equally true, which seems impossible, or only one of them is true, which admittedly is a possibility, or they are all false, and I am not the atheist you think I am. Everyone in the room is an atheist because they have a God in which they don't believe. Rabbi Wolpe has a God in which he doesn't believe. I just say, I'll go you one better. I don't think there are any gods at all. It's not that hard of a leap to make, you know. There's a wonderful novel by Peter de Vries called Slouching to Kalamazoo. A novelist you all ought to read if you haven't. He was brought up as a Dutch Reformed Calvinist. In this novel, there's a debate between the town atheist and the town priest. And they both succeed in convincing each other completely in the course of the evening. This never really happens. So much so that neither of them can be persuaded to go back to their previous position. But at any rate, de Vries at one point says, musing on this, the leading character says, people used to believe there were many gods, they were polytheists. Then they believed there were spirit gods, gods in the trees, gods in the waterfalls, gods in the wind, so forth. And then they became more polytheistic, and then they became monotheistic, with only one god. So they're getting nearer to the true figure all the time. Who says there's no progress? The magic figure of zero, the discovery of which was a great innovation in human history, is the one at which we will arrive when we contemplate the likelihood that we are supernaturally designed with a plan in mind for us. Now let's just consider for a moment, what if I was to announce that I was a convert to that view? What if I say, okay, I give up. I've listened to the wise men now, I think it's true. I think that God intervened and that I'm saved as a result, and that I wouldn't know right from wrong, and so I'm grateful for this intervention. Well, I'd have to believe the following. the human species we now know to be at the very least 100,000 years old. Certainly not less. Some good scientists say near a quarter of a million. I'll take 100,000. For the beliefs of Jews, Muslims, and Christians at any rate to have any validity, it must be the case that the Creator watched this species for 97,000 years as it was born, usually dying in childbirth, lived perhaps to the age of 20 or 25, dying in terror of nameless diseases or of their teeth, terrified by earthquakes they couldn't explain, by typhoons, by hurricanes, tortured by plagues that they couldn't understand. They didn't know there were microorganisms who have dominion over us. We don't have dominion over nature, it's the other way around. Violent in war, slavery, racism, you name it. For 97,000 years, heaven watches with indifference. And then says, 3,000 years ago, starting 3,000 years, it's probably time to intervene now. Not in China, where they can already read and know how to make things and have a concept of science and knowledge and philosophy. No, only in the most remote, backward, savage, and superstitious parts of the Middle East. And that's how you'll know your redemption. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe any of you in this room can be persuaded by any artifice of rhetoric or sophistry to believe anything so wicked as well as anything so stupid as that. If it were true, it would be hateful. Those who allege it to be true are not necessarily hateful, but they ask you to ignore all the painstaking evidence that's been piled up by the real work of humanity, which is that of philosophy, science, and culture, in which the next step each society, each individual has to take is the emancipation of themselves from theocracy and its poisons. And I invite you to join me in that enterprise, and I'm very grateful for your attention. Thank you.
Do some interior decorating real quick. You guys see over there now? Is that good? All right. You guys also, for the record, can everybody see now? All right.
You're invisible. God is intangible. I want to start off by saying that I agree with Mr. Hitchens. After listening to him, it's clear that the adrenal glands are too big because mine went into overdrive, not only because of what he said, but because of the way in which I think you can paint religion that is false to religion and true only to a conception of religion that does violence to what it really is. And I want to take all three areas, first of all, religion's records, second, religion's claims, and then third, the way that it's painted in his accounting of it, and not so much contradict some of the claims that he made, but have you see it differently, because the truth is that religion doesn't, by and large, make scientific claims, and it ought not to be evaluated scientifically. And Popper, when he said the claims couldn't be falsified, he didn't say they weren't meaningful claims, he said they weren't scientific claims. But Popper allowed all sorts of claims, including his own sociological claims. Historical claims can't be falsified, philosophical claims can't be falsified. You and I live all the time on ground that can't be falsified. I can't falsify your reason for getting up this morning. I can't falsify the statement that life is beautiful or life is not beautiful. Yet who would say on that account that that isn't an important, and in fact, more important than any specific scientific claim that you could make about how close you are genetically to a chimpanzee? Because you and I both know that that isn't the ground on which human beings live. Part of what happens in a religious system is that religions have been filtered through very imperfect creatures, human beings. And Mr. Hitchens makes the incorrect claim that religions say you wouldn't know right from wrong if this book didn't come down from heaven and tell you about right from wrong. If you read the book, you would know that the book doesn't say that. In fact, what happens to the first brothers in human history, Cain and Abel? One kills the other. And God comes down and says to Cain, you did a terrible thing, and you're going to be punished.